Taroth Assault Glutton Heavy Bowgun is a Rarity 7 heavy bowgun that you can get as a reward from the Kulve Taroth Siege. It's already gained a lot of notoriety because it's one of the strongest weapons in the game for speedrunning right now, so I thought, I better do a guide on it to help people understand it a little better, because I know there's going to be a lot of people who are just going to try it out just because they hear it's good, right? So let's go ahead and delve really deep into how to use this weapon and what it really does and what it can do for you in most situations. So basically, this is a spread ammo heavy bowgun that replaced all the previous spread ammo heavy bowguns. So this is the best one now. And spread ammo, the way it works is you have to get close to your target in order to deal optimal damage. You have something on all of the bowguns have something called critical range. And you'll notice in the crosshairs, you're in critical range when you get the small ring to show up inside of the larger ring. So that's critical distance, and basically with the spread ammo, you're going to get real close to your target. You get a little bit of room. So in a sense, it's a bit of a riskier ammo type to use than some of the other longer ranged ammo types. But there's a trade-off. It deals impact damage when it lands. That means it can cause your target to flinch easily, right? And it's also going to deal a lot of damage. That's something that's special about the spread ammo. It's kind of a high risk, high reward ammo type where you're going to get close to your target, and that means you're at kind of like a melee weapon. You're at the same risks that a melee weapon would have, unlike some of the other bowguns, but you deal more damage. And in this case, you deal a lot more damage because the basic attributes of the Glutton Heavy Bowgun is that it's going to deal a lot of damage. So why don't we jump into those attributes? I'll start to break them down. So starting off, the attack value actually gets pretty high at 297 after you've added Elementalist. So this is an Elementalist heavy bowgun. A lot of the heavy bowguns will say they have none for their element type, but that's not true. What you actually have to do in order to know if Elementalist will work with the heavy bowgun is you have to go look at what ammo it carries, and you have to see if it carries any elemental ammo. If it does, it's not an Elementalist heavy bowgun. Now, if it doesn't carry any elemental ammo, that means it is an Elementalist heavy bowgun. See what I'm going with here? So this is an Elementalist heavy bowgun, and it gets that damage boost. It has a starting affinity of positive 10%, and then we don't really worry about the deviation. As far as heavy bowguns go, I've never really had a problem with any deviation at all. Like whether it's high or low, it almost makes no difference. So the deviation here is average, and that's not really going to affect you. For the mods, I think this is a kind of a more technical aspect of this weapon class that a lot of people struggle with. I know I did when I got started. Custom mods, basically when you go to the workshop and you have them mod your heavy bowgun, you're going to want to choose, well, it depends. First of all, you'll want the recoil suppressor either way, because that's going to drop the recoil on this weapon to low for the spread ammo 3, okay? And what that means is it's going to shoot faster. That's what recoil does. The more recoil you have, the slower your weapon shoots. The lower the recoil, the faster it shoots. So you want one recoil suppressor because it's going to drop your recoil rating from normal to low. That's good. That increases your damage. Then you have two options. You can either take 2 close range mods, or you can take 1 close range mod and a shield mod. If you're really wanting to speedrun and juggle your target really hard, you're going to want 2 close range mods. If you're playing more casual, maybe a multiplayer situation, or maybe you're fighting a monster that is very hard to dodge with the heavy bowgun, for example, maybe like Diablos, Black Diablos, that's a good example. You'll want to bring that shield mod with you. And the shield mod will work just like a lance or a gun lance, except in your case, you don't have to push any buttons to guard. The way guard works on heavy bowguns is just don't shoot the bowgun, right? You can just stand still and push no buttons. It'll automatically guard for you because the default stance is guarding. Okay, so that's the mods. I hope that clears it up. You don't really need the reload assist. You don't really need any of the other mods, so don't worry about them. You'll notice the special ammo type is Wyvern Snipe. That's a nice approach. I wouldn't use it in the middle of the fight because honestly you're going to get better DPS from just using the level 3 spread ammo. So if you want to start the fight off using a Wyvern Snipe, or you're coming back from the camp, feel free to use it. But in the middle of the fight, just stick with the spread 3 the whole time. You just get much better DPS. Okay, now a big part of any bowgun, heavy or light, right? A big part of it is the ammo. So we need to break down the attributes of the ammo for this weapon. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. You'll notice we're not interested in normal ammo or pierce ammo because it doesn't carry enough of them. Then when we look at spread, it holds a lot of level 3 spread ammo, and that's one of the things that really sets it apart from the other heavy bowguns. Not only are we getting good damage, but it's going to hold 6 shots of that level 3 spread ammo. That's extremely good. You'll notice it does have recovery ammo. I almost never used that. It does have 2 shots of paralysis. I do use that. Paralysis is very useful. However, keep in mind, if the monster has already been paralyzed one time, I wouldn't try to paralyze it again. You're just going to spend too much time trying to paralyze it a second time. As most of you probably already know, the first time a monster gets an ailment, they usually have an internal health bar for that type of ailment that's very small. The second time you're trying to apply the ailment, that internal health bar for that ailment is really large. So if you try to cause paralysis a second time, you could actually waste a lot of your time trying to do that when you could have just been dealing damage with spread 3. So in a lot of cases, if you're speedrunning, you won't even worry too much about the paralysis. You'll just stick to the spread. I mean, you're certainly welcome to paralyze the monster, especially if they have a weakness to paralysis. And the other situation you're going to think about using paralysis is definitely in a group, because when you paralyze a monster in a group, it has kind of a multiplicative effect where everybody benefits from the paralysis. So you're more likely to think about using the paralysis in a group. And for solo speedrun, it's more an issue of convenience. When it comes to speedrun, it may not even be optimal. Speedrun really is about trying to get the best times, so you probably do just want to be pumping out the damage the whole time, right? So there are probably a few exceptions. All right, and one of the unique things about this bowgun, one of the negative unique things about this bowgun, is that it doesn't have any wyvern ammo. And wyvern ammo on the heavy bowguns is pretty useful, especially if the monster's been put to sleep, right? And a monster always goes to sleep if they escape to their nest. Well, you don't get any wyvern ammo on this heavy bowgun, but it's a trade-off, and honestly, it's a fine trade-off because the spread ammo is so good. Now, the other thing we have to look at when we're examining the ammo, it shows off kind of like the reload speed, and it shows off the recoil for all of those ammo types. You'll notice the spread ammo, after we've added the recoil mod to it, that the recoil is at +1. That's pretty much as fast as it gets. That's really, really good for spread ammo 3. This is basically why the gun is so powerful. The other interesting thing is that it also reloads quickly, which is also pretty rare to have both the low recoil and the fast reload speed, right? It says normal. And that's what allows this gun to become so powerful. It's holding a lot of ammo. It has decent damage, especially after Elementless, right? Spread ammo is already stronger than the other ammo types. It's just riskier to use, with an exception to cluster. I'm sure some people would say cluster's maybe more powerful than spread. But that's a different discussion. But it's got all those things going for it in the low recoil. And on top of all of that, you don't need to build, I guess we're moving over to the build discussion now. You don't need to build Divinity, and you don't need to build ammo up. So if you're unfamiliar with popular heavy bowgun builds, they very often take Xeno'jiiva Divinity, that's 3 parts of the Xeno'jiiva set, and they very often take the other one, ammo up, right? That's from Free Element. That's the other thing it does. It increases the amount of ammo you hold. Well, since this gun reloads quickly, you don't really need the ammo up. It also holds a lot, so you're not going to be reloading too many times in the match. At the same time, you don't need that Xeno'jiiva Divinity to increase the amount of ammo you bring with you, because when it comes to spread ammo, you can already bring a lot and you can easily craft more, so you don't really run out of ammo. The fact that you don't need those 2 skill sets allows you to build just straight damage. That's kind of the trifecta right there. That's the trifecta that's making Glutton so powerful. You don't need Divinity, and you don't need ammo up, and then you've got the low recoil and the fast reload, and finally you hold a lot of a high level spread ammo, right? Those 3 things combined make Glutton heavy bowgun very good. Is it the best though? That's debatable. I think it comes down to situation, and you know what? Well, let me go ahead and jump into looking at the build, and then we'll talk about tips afterward. Okay, so you'll notice on the build, I have the Dragon King Eye Patch Alpha, Kulve Taroth Ire Beta, Kaiser Van Braces Alpha, Nergigante Coil Beta, and the Lavaseath Greaves Beta. Lavaseath Greaves, that wasn't necessary. I could have done it differently, but I'm I put this build together assuming that some of you guys don't have the spread power shot decoration. It's a rare decoration. It's pretty hard to acquire, so we went with the Lavaseath Greaves because it's pretty efficient anyways, and then you don't need the decoration for it. You'll notice that I prioritize weakness exploit. crit boost, and maximum might. Those are those three are very important for maxing your damage, right? You're going to focus on the monster's head so that the impact damage hits the monster on the head and flinches them and stuns them, right? And then the attack boost is optional. You can actually build slightly different if you need more survivability. You can go with vitality or something like that. It's really up to you, but probably the key skills here are weakness exploit, crit boost, max might, non-elemental boost, and spread power shots. If you really want to do well with this heavy bowgun, you'll take all of those. The alternatives, ways you might modify it to accommodate you more, more personally, you might consider bringing the guard up skill, and then on your bowgun's mods, once again, you might consider bringing a shield. My setup is strictly for juggling the monster and dealing as much damage as possible. But that doesn't always work in a multiplayer setting, okay? So that's why you might consider doing it a little different with the shield, right? I've had a lot of practice with the heavy bowguns, and that allows me to get away with a lot of things when I'm fighting the monsters that maybe if you're newer to the heavy bowguns, you wouldn't get away with. So really, if you're new to the heavy bowguns, I guess what I'm saying is maybe consider bringing the shield mod and a guard up decoration, and maybe trade that attack boost out for vitality, okay? You'll lose some of your damage, it's true, but you won't be carding for your teammates, and that's considerate. On the left, you'll see that I brought the Rocksteady Mantle and the Impact Mantle. You don't really need Affinity Booster because you're already getting pretty good affinity thanks to the loadout that I have, but you do want to definitely bring the Impact Mantle. The Impact Mantle is going to make the impact damage on the spread ammo even better, and it's going to cause the monster to get flinched and knocked over very quickly. So I would definitely recommend using that Impact Mantle, and Impact Mantle is one of your key gear items right here. Alright, so we've talked about the attributes, we've talked about the builds. I should probably move on to talking about general tips for fighting monsters. This is a terrific weapon to use about just about any monster, that's the truth. If you can get close to the monster, you're going to do well. There's exceptions. Here's a perfect example of an exception. If I had to fight Kushala Daora, I wouldn't use this gun. I would probably use the Dark Devourer at that point because I want to use the sticky ammo, right? So Kushala Daora, he's going to jump in the air. I'm going to shoot sticky at his head while he's flying and try to give my team a KO, right? And that's going to let my team group up on him. Just the fact that he flies means it's going to be harder to get the critical distance on the spread ammo, right? And just the fact that he has a windshield means it's going to be harder to approach him. You might get knocked back and waste a lot of time. So that's a perfect example of when the Glutton heavy bowgun actually isn't the best choice of the heavy bowguns. It's a pretty good choice most of the time, but it's not necessarily the best. However, for most monsters, this is just a heavy damage dealer, and all you gotta do is focus on their head. It's really up to you what you want to use. I would say Dark Devourer Sticky Ammo Cluster Bombs was actually considerably easier, especially the setup I've gone with, where with no shield mod, I'm just going pure damage. Really, it's more of a glass cannon. It really does rely on me just landing all my shots, having proper positioning, and then juggling the monster. If I fail to do any of those, it's going to be a bad time. Whereas with Dark Devourer, you have a much you have a lot more wiggling around room. If you mess up, it's not a big deal, right? So that's kind of how it is when you're playing with the Glutton. If you're not skilled with the heavy bowgun, you might actually not do that well with the Glutton. And if you are very skilled, you're going to be fine in just about all cases, right? It's going to come down to how well do you understand the monster you're fighting? Do you understand how to stay out of their moveset? Right? Are you just going to take damage the whole time from them? Because I noticed I did a health regeneration augmentation on one of my spread heavy bowguns, and it actually didn't help that much, right? Actually, heavy bowguns like the Griffin Bazooka using Wyvern ammo, wow, that's really good with the health augmentation. I mean, I just get all my health back in one shot is what it feels like. But with this gun, when you're using spread, and I suspect the way it works is it takes one pellet of the spread or something like that and gives you back health based on that. I don't know. For me, the health regen just didn't feel that good, but of course, you should always experiment with it. You can do it yourself if you want. I would probably augment this twice for attack, because attack's usually the hardest thing to raise in this game on your weapon. But yeah, as I was saying, you know, this really is a gun where all of your shots need to be landing perfectly, and you do need to be dodging that monster perfectly. If you don't, you're going to be missing out on damage because the monster's going to be juggling you. You're going to be sheathing your weapon and healing unless you brought a health augmentation that, like I said, I don't even think it does that good of a job. Or you're going to be trading off some of that amazing damage for a shield mod and guard up, which comes in, it starts to question how good is this weapon anyways, right, compared to a cluster bomb weapon at that point. So yeah, you can see how even though it's an extremely good weapon, there's still practice to be had, and there's still things to consider when you're going into your fight. Probably the last thing I would complain about, besides the fact that it doesn't have wyvern ammo, is that it feels kind of repetitive. There's a point where you just feel like I don't know if it feels like you are trying hard the whole time, but it ends up not feeling that exciting. I don't know why. That might be a personal preference kind of thing. Maybe some of you guys find it really fun. But there you go. There's your tips for the gun, or my opinion of how the gun feels while you're using it. I think in the end, I actually still prefer the Dark Devourer. It's my go-to heavy bowgun right now. I've used all the heavy bowguns pretty extensively, and I've used most of the light bowguns extensively as well. And for me, nothing's beating the Dark Devourer. And that's because Dark Devourer is just so easy and because it causes the ailment so quickly. But this is certainly an extremely good weapon, a top tier, even amongst all the other weapon classes. This is a top tier speedrunning weapon that I can't imagine is going to, unless they nerf it, it's not going to be going away anytime soon. So you should definitely, if you pick one up, you should familiarize yourself with it and give it a run. Alright, well that's everything I have. I think for the rating, we're going to put it into the S tier. I was tempted to put it into S plus tier, but I think that it just requires so much skill to use it well, to get the most out of it, that I don't really think it deserves S plus, but it is definitely an S tier weapon, and that is just because of the damage it can output. Alright, well I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.